Hi, everyone. I'm Linda, 29 years old, and a marketing executive with a story that's been eating at me. I'm sitting in my cozy, if cramped, apartment flipping through old photos of me and my big brother, Mike. We've always been close. After our parents split, it was just the two of us against the world. Now he's getting married to Susan, and while I'm trying to be thrilled for him, something feels off. Hey, sis, you got a sec? Mike's voice crackles through the phone. For you? Always. What's up? It's about the wedding. Susan was wondering if you could help with some of the planning. I bite my lip. Sure thing. What does she need? As Mike rattles off tasks, I feel a twinge of unease. Susan comes from this uber-wealthy family, and sometimes it feels like she looks down on us. But hey, this is Mike's big day. I can deal. Later that week, I find myself at their sprawling place, surrounded by wedding magazines and seating charts. Susan breezes in, all designer clothes and picture-perfect hair. Oh, Linda, you're here. Great. Her smile doesn't quite reach her eyes. I hope you don't mind, but I've made some changes to the plans we discussed. I force a smile. No problem. What did you have in mind? As she talks, I notice how she keeps saying people like us when referring to her affluent friends. It stings, but I brush it off. This day is about Mike. Then the doorbell rings. Enter Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, Susan's parents, losing wealth and a thinly veiled superiority. Ah, Linda, is it? Mr. Thompson eyes me up and down. Mike's sister. How quaint. Mrs. Thompson chimes in, her tone cerebral but sharp. Susan, darling, are you sure it's wise to involve family in the planning? These things are best left to professionals. My cheeks burn, but before I can respond, Mike steps in. Linda's been a huge help, actually. We couldn't do this without her. I shoot him a grateful look, but a sinking feeling tells me this is just the beginning. Later that night, I'm venting to my boyfriend, Jason, over takeout. I don't know, Jace. Something feels off about Susan and her family. He squeezes my hand. It's okay to be protective of Mike. Just give it time. I nod, but deep down, I'm not convinced. As the wedding day looms closer, I throw myself into my maid of honor duties, determined to make it perfect for Mike. Still, every interaction with Susan and the Thompsons leaves me feeling like I'm losing my brother to a world that doesn't want me in it. Finally, the big day arrives. I'm running around, doing my best to keep everything on track. Straighten Mike's tie, quick pep talk, check on Susan. Thanks, Linda, she says coolly. Try not to mess anything up, okay? I brush off the comment, forcing a smile. But during the ceremony, I can't help noticing the whispers and sideways glances from Susan's family. Mrs. Thompson's disapproving stares are practically daggers. At the reception, I duck into the bathroom to fix my makeup. That's when I hear it. Did you see what Linda's wearing? It looks like she got it from a thrift store, Mrs. Thompson says, her voice dripping with disdain. My cheeks flush as I step out, coming face to face with her. She doesn't even flinch. Oh, Linda, dear, she says loudly, feigning innocence. We were just discussing your interesting dress choice. It must be hard to find something suitable on a budget. I open my mouth to respond, but Mr. Thompson interrupts. So Linda, Mike tells us you work in marketing. That must be challenging for someone with your background. Did you even finish college? I have a degree from. Susan cuts in, laughing lightly. Oh, Daddy, don't you remember? Linda's the one who had that adorable little speech problem as a kid. What was it you used to say, Linda? What's P? They all burst into laughter. My stomach drops. I glance around, desperate for an ally, but Mike's across the room, looking uncomfortable. Jason appeared at my side, his face dark with anger. Hey, back off. Linda's twice the person any of you will ever be. Mr. Thompson sneered. And who might you be? The hired help? Jason squared his shoulders. I'm Linda's boyfriend, and I won't stand here while you insult her. The room grew tense as the argument escalated. Susan's family hurled insults, their words cutting like knives, while Jason stood his ground, defending me fiercely. Through it all, Mike stood there, silent and visibly uncomfortable. I couldn't take it anymore. Tears streaming down my face, I grabbed my purse and ran out of the reception hall. Jason called after me, but I couldn't stop. I drove home in a daze, my mind replaying every cruel word and most painfully, Mike's deafening silence. How could he just stand there? How could he let them treat me like that? At home, still in my bridesmaid dress, I collapsed onto the couch. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mike. My heart leaped. Maybe this was an apology, an explanation, anything. Instead, the message read, "Hey, things got pretty intense. Maybe it's best if you give us some space for a while." I stared at the screen in disbelief. Space? After what just happened? "You can't be serious," I typed back. "They insulted me, mocked me, and you did nothing." His response came quickly. "It's complicated, Linda. Just let things cool down, okay?" I threw my phone across the room, feeling like my heart had been ripped out. My brother, my rock, the one person I thought I could always count on, had chosen them over me. Jason showed up an hour later, worry etched on his face. "Linda, I'm so sorry. What they did was unforgivable." I collapsed into his arms, sobbing. "He didn't even defend me, Jason. He just stood there." Jason held me tightly. "You don't deserve this. None of it." But as I cried in his arms, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Something had shifted. Something darker was brewing. The weeks that followed were unbearable. Mike's silence was deafening, and when we did talk, he felt like a stranger. At a family barbecue, I overheard one of our cousins whispering, "Did you hear what Mike and Susan are saying about Linda? Apparently, she's jealous and tried to ruin their wedding." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. That night, I couldn't sleep. Why was Mike doing this? This wasn't him. "Jason, something's not right," I said the next morning. "I need to figure out what's going on with the Thompsons." He nodded, determination in his eyes. "I'm with you. Where do we start?" We began with Mr. Thompson's company. Jason, being a tech whiz, managed to find financial records that didn't add up. "Linda, look at this," he said, pointing to the screen. "They're cooking the books." The deeper we dug, the more patterns emerged. Fraud, embezzlement, shady dealings. The Thompsons were neck-deep in corruption. But that wasn't all. I reached out to anyone who might know more about Susan's past. My old college roommate, Emma, dropped a bombshell. "Linda, I hate to tell you this, but Susan dated my cousin. She isolated him from his family, maxed out his credit cards, and dumped him the moment she found someone wealthier." The pieces began to fall into place. Susan wasn't just manipulative. She was dangerous. One evening, Mike's best friend Tom called me. "Linda, I'm worried about Mike. The other day, I overheard Susan and her parents pressuring him to cut you out completely. They're saying you're a bad influence." My blood ran cold. "Thanks for telling me, Tom. I appreciate it." Jason called me over one night, his face grim. "Look at this," he said, showing me bank statements. "They've been transferring Mike's money into accounts they control. They're trying to trap him." I felt sick. "We need to stop them, Jason. We need to save Mike." As we pieced everything together, a horrifying picture emerged. The Thompsons were isolating Mike, controlling his finances, and possibly planning to use him as a scapegoat for their crimes. "Linda," Jason said, his voice serious, "this is bigger than we thought. We need to be careful how we handle this." I nodded, my determination hardening. "I know, but I'm not giving up on Mike. We're going to expose them and get my brother back." Looking at the mountain of evidence we gathered, I knew one thing. This was war. The Thompsons had money, power, and my brother under their thumb. They didn't know who they were messing with. I muttered, my voice low but steady. "Get ready, Thompsons. You picked the wrong family to mess with." Little did I know, the confrontation that was coming would change everything. The truth was about to explode into their perfect world, and there was no turning back. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. I had spent weeks planning this family gathering, making sure every detail was in place. As I stood in Aunt Martha's living room, surrounded by family and old friends, a mix of nervousness and steely determination gripped me. Mike walked in first, with Susan and the Thompsons trailing behind him. The tension in the room was suffocating. "What's all this about, Linda?" Mike asked, his voice wary but curious. I took a deep breath, the weight of what I was about to do sinking in. "It's time for the truth to come out, Mike. All of it." I started with the financial evidence, the fraudulent business practices of Mr. Thompson, emails, records, and clear evidence of their illegal activities. Gasps filled the room as the truth came to light. "This is preposterous," Mr. Thompson sputtered, his face turning red. "You have no right." But I wasn't finished. I hit play on a recording of Susan and her parents plotting to isolate Mike and control his finances. Susan's cold voice echoed through the room. Once we cut off that sister of his, we'll have total control. He'll never know what hit him. Mike's face drained of color, his eyes locked on Susan, disbelief written all over him. Is this true? Before she could answer, I dropped the final bombshell. Susan's past relationships, the manipulation, the financial abuse, all of it. You've been lying to me this whole time, haven't you? Mike's voice cracked, his world crumbling. The Thompsons tried to fight back, calling me jealous, unstable, anything to discredit me. But the room was on my side. Family and friends stood firm, backing up my claims with their own observations. Just when Mr. Thompson started threatening legal action, there was a knock at the door. 2 police officers entered. Mr. Thompson, we have some questions about your company's financial practices. As the officers led Mr. Thompson away in handcuffs, the room erupted into chaos. Amidst it all, Mike approached me, tears in his eyes. Linda, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. I should have stood up for you. Part of me wanted to pull him into a hug, to tell him it was all okay. But the hurt was still too fresh. I needed more than an apology. I appreciate that, Mike, I said, my voice steady but guarded. But it's going to take time to rebuild what we lost. Mike nodded, understanding the boundaries I was setting. As the dust settled, I watched the Thompsons being questioned by the police. Susan, suddenly abandoned by her family, tried to plead with Mike. Baby, please, we can work this out. I love you. But Mike stood firm. No, Susan, we're done. I want a divorce. The following days brought the full extent of the Thompsons' crimes to light. They faced serious legal consequences, their carefully crafted facade crumbling around them. As for Mike and me, we began the slow, painful process of rebuilding our relationship. It wasn't easy. There were many tough conversations ahead. But we both wanted to heal. One evening, as Jason and I watched the news report on the Thompsons' arrests, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. You did it, Linda, Jason said, squeezing my hand. You stood up for yourself and saved your brother. I smiled, relief and pride flooding through me. We did it. I couldn't have done it without you. Looking back on everything that had happened, I realized how much I'd grown. I had learned to trust my instincts, to stand up for myself, and to uncover the truth, even when it meant tearing apart everything I'd known. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Jason by my side and my relationship with Mike on the mend, I felt stronger than ever. The Thompsons had thought they could break me, but they only made me stronger. As I watched them face justice for their actions, I knew one thing for sure. Sometimes karma really does come through in the end. If you were in Mike's shoes, would you ever be able to forgive Linda for exposing your spouse and in-laws, even if they were manipulating you? Or would you resent her for destroying your marriage, no matter the truth?